Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
This episode is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Didn't file with TurboTax last year? That's in the past. Now, Taxes is getting the TurboTax app and filing your own taxes for free if you didn't file with them last year. File by February 18th. All tax forms, all 100% free. Now, this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. New filers and filers who didn't use TurboTax last year only must start and file your own taxes in-app by February 18th. Excludes TurboTax Live. Full terms at TurboTax.com.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
Hey, Chicago. What do you say? Cubs gonna win today.
Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Pointless Exercise podcast. It's baseball playoff time. So with me to talk about it is National Baseball writer David Brown. Dave,
hi, Andy.
I was going to ask you how the weather is in Kansas City since the Royals are playing, but they're playing in Baltimore, so it probably doesn't matter what the weather is like in Kansas City.
It's raining in Baltimore, according to a tweet I saw. So
I saw it this morning on MLB Network that it was raining, and for some reason I thought it was Kansas City.
No such. The Orioles is the division. Or the division. Did they win the division?
No, they were the best of the wild card teams.
Hang on, let me get the baseball expert out here to clear it up. Yeah, they had the best wild card record. So in the Royals are only in the playoffs because the Twins aren't. Basically.
Yeah.
I think they could win this series. I think they could.
They're getting the great Vinny Pasquantino back today.
Well, I don't know how you get into shape in late September to play baseball exactly in a way that will be effective, but they're going to give it a shot.
He's been out for a month. He was supposed to be out for at least 6 weeks. What did he break?
Finger.
Yeah. Much like Cub legend Anthony Rizzo and his 2 broken fingers, but he's got till Saturday to get healed.
That's a big 4.5 days.
They bought him all that extra time by winning the division, so Tony can cram that in. I think it's his left. I think it's his right hand, right? So he can try to cram it in the glove. I don't know.
Which guy are we talking, Riz or?
Well, Rizzo. Why am I talking about? I'm talking about the guy who's not playing this week. So that's very. It seems like that's really right on top of things. Now let's talk about some of the Cubs, and they're not playing till. No, let's not do that. But yeah, so Vinny's back in the lineup. He's hitting third. They're not even hiding him.
Don't dip those toes or fingers. No. Dive right in. That'll tell you what kind of lineup the Royals have.
Yeah. Could they do this? Could they tape his hand to the bat And he's going to play first base, right? He's not going to DH.
I don't
and
know.
Just have him and have him play first base with the bat in his throwing hand.
Is that against the rules?
Yeah,
it's sort of a rhetorical question. I don't know.
It'd be kind of intimidating if you were running to first and Vinny is holding a bat in his hand. I've had MLB Network on all morning, and they have that ballpark cam, and they were showing one of the Tigers in Houston doing a drill where he was throwing it was a typical like where the coach is close to you and you're tossing the ball and he's hitting it on one bounce and you're catching it.
Yeah.
But the guy was wearing a glove on both hands.
Wow.
And I don't know what the purpose of that drill is.
I need to see this to fully understand.
Yeah. He's catching
catching
it in one glove and then throwing it back with, just using the glove to toss it back, and then they'd hit it to the other side and just doing that back and forth. I have no idea what the purpose of that was.
Well, so far we've covered, is it legal to bring a bat with you on defense? Is it legal for you to bring 2 gloves on defense? Yeah. The libertarian in me says, live and let live, but... Yeah.
I don't know. Well, thanks to Hurricane Rob Manfred and his indecision to what to do with the Braves and the Mets, we got a very weird doubleheader on the day after the season ended, with an amazing first game and then exactly what you thought the second game would be, because the Mets had, not only were they not that motivated because they want to save their pitching, they knew they were in, they were going to, but they also, if they had won, they would go to San Diego. The Padres might very well have the best team in the National League right now.
Yeah, right.
Or you could lose and go to Milwaukee, where the Brewers never seem to survive the first 2 days of the postseason. I was kind of surprised the Mets fielded a full lineup for game 2. I thought maybe they would just have like 4 guys running around trying to cover everything while everybody else drank champagne. But to their credit, they did.
Or maybe we would see a scene of, we don't know where the Mets are. We're trying to locate them at this time. And then, wait a minute, what's that over there? And we get a camera pulling on some buses headed out to Hartsfield Airport. Hartsfield, Maynard Jackson International. So I don't, that would have been against the rules and they would have forfeited. I don't know, like, but those are the positive things. What are the penalties?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I was disappointed they didn't get Grimace at bat in game 2. For everything he did for them, you think one token at bat in a meaningless game, but they didn't.
Well, they think social media, coverage is enough for Grimace, I think.
I guess.
He's all over that. Or there, I should say. Not necessarily he.
So the Mets, who started the season 0-5 and almost got no hit in that 5th game. And we're playing terrible baseball as late as Memorial Day, are in the playoffs. And the Braves, a team who every good player they have either got hurt during the season, or if you're Chris Sale, you waited till the very last day of the season.
Oh, my arm.
Yeah. Oh, my back. I was sure that he was running around the clubhouse just cutting jerseys up. And that's why.
Right. That was plan B.
Yep. Should we wear the throwbacks for game 2 today? Yeah, I think we should. Wait a minute. Where's Chris going? They're both in the playoffs, and the Cubs, a team that apparently tried, they're not. Is that does that reflect poorly on the roster construction of the Cubs when teams?
No, not at all.
No, I didn't think so.
Apparently he's also doing a lot of work there. Yeah, it's, we kind of, I remember, this is not a second guess, I don't think. I remember talking to you about this at the beginning of the season, or even in the off season leading up to the season, about how it didn't seem like they did what they needed to do to get better. And so this is not, I hate it when people say, well, are you surprised? But it is not that surprising that the season turned out mediocre-ish.
No. They made 2 big moves. They signed Shota Imanaga. Basically, they went Yoshinobu Yamamoto shopping and went, oh, that's too expensive. What about the other guy who turned out to be an excellent signing for them? That was very good. And then they brought Cody back, when he fell in their lap the second week of spring training and didn't have a team. And that was it. That's pretty much all they did.
And that doesn't qualify as an improvement because he was there already.
Yes, they were going to be actively worse until he showed up. And then it was just, well, maybe we'll be. And they were basically the exact same team they were the year before. They won 83 games and they didn't make the playoffs. And they tried to blame it all on David Ross, which I'm fine with blaming David Ross for lots. I blame David Ross for things. I blame him for the hurricane. But you can't just get a new manager and then just not give him that good a team and go, all right, he's worth 6 wins. Go do your magic. And Craig's like, there's no magic to be done here. But now Craig is firing coaches.
Right. Which
I'm all for. He didn't get to hire any, and so now he gets to hire some. And
is there a good reason why he didn't get to hire any?
They claimed it was too late. He got hired like 8 days after the season ended. It's not like they hired him in the middle of spring training. I never understood that. Mm-hmm. I can't remember if they fired Andy Green when they fired Ross or Andy left in solidarity, but the only spot that was open on his staff was bench coach, and then Carter helpfully hired Ryan Flaherty for him. I suppose, if Craig had decided, like, I got to get my own guys, I'm sure that he could have done some of it then.
Right.
But he basically just took Ross's coaching staff and then got about halfway through the season and went, oh, this was a horrible mistake. We think. He's getting rid of some of them. So
I could be mistaken about this, but I assert that while there can be a wrong answer as to who's coaching first base or, on your staff, I think there are probably a lot of right answers. Like there's a bunch, like just because it was a little later into the offseason, I guess, there's probably 2 or 3 guys that he could have pursued. It's like, this is my list. Maybe I can't get number 1, but number 2 or number 3 would be okay, and I could probably get them. Yeah. I think that's there are only so many openings for coaches, but I think there's some guys who can do the job who aren't necessarily doing the job.
I think there might have been more turnover if the Brewers hadn't hired Pat Murphy.
Yeah.
Like, I think if they hadn't hired Murphy would have come to the Cubs with Craig. If they hadn't hired Pat, a new manager would have brought, like, Murphy kept all the Brewers coaches. So if there were a couple of guys that Craig would have brought with, they just had jobs. And he's like, yeah, you can just stay. He's like, I'm not even moving from Milwaukee. Why should you guys? Actually, maybe we want to ride down together. We can still live here. We'll just carpool. It'll be fun. But to me, you feel like that was a wasted year because you bring in a new manager and he's got new ideas and you want to change the culture a little bit to what he does. And then you just leave the old guy's staff.
You want to have control at least over who is in charge. If not, if there isn't a perfect person, you want to be able to select whoever it is.
Yeah. But now it's his chance. Year 2, he's going to bring in some new guys. And it's not like I think who knows if these guys are good coaches or bad coaches or whatever, but they clearly need a new voice. They need a new approach to things. And if you just keep the same people around, you don't really change that. If they come up with some new ideas, everybody reverts back to what they know. And in Cub coach's case, most of the time that they know is not much. So we'll see. We'll see what they do with Tommy Hotovy gets a lot of credit for the pitching brilliance. And it'd be nice if we actually see some of that actually turn out. That to me, I wrote this today in the newsletter about, you bring in Craig, but one of the things is you want him to lead the team, but also you're envious of how well the Brewers develop pitching.
Right.
And apparently they brought Carter Hawkins over because they were envious of the way the Guardians developed pitching, and they hoped he had this. But then you bring those 2 guys in, and you don't change anything else. It's like shouldn't you try to get some of the guys who were actually doing the pitching development in those places? Maybe that's what they'll do. Who knows? But anyway, we can worry about the Cubs all off season, and God knows I will. There's actual important, good teams playing important games, and the Tigers, they're kicking things off today. Tigers Astros. Apparently, some Astro fans are upset that they are playing an afternoon game. So, who cares? It's people don't work. Just go to the game. It'll be fine.
Right.
Do we know? But this schedule, I think, was set, right? It's not like they moved the National League games to the nighttime because of yesterday and all the weird travel that was going to happen. It seems
that
like
actually was my first thought, but I don't know for a fact. I wonder if when they said it, they knew that it might be a possibility that the season would go an extra day, so that's why they put the National League later. It does work out. I mean, the most fair thing, whether they did it on purpose or not, is that the NL teams go later in the day, just because of travel.
And it would make sense that no matter what, there's only one West Coast team in this round, and it's the Padres. So you think they would play the last game of the day.
Right.
So, and that's just, and Milwaukee is so far west. That's, well, maybe not. They're
West Dallas, maybe.
Maybe that's why Houston is mad. We should have had the 4:30 game. It would have been so much better than playing at 1:30. Whatever. There's really only one night game. Games are 1:30, 3. These are Central Time because we live in the Central Time Zone, so that's the only thing that's important. 3 o'clock, 3:30. That's not right. 4:30 and 7:30. So there's only one night game. So what are they complaining about? But anyway, so Tigers, Astros. Here's your announcers then. These are all on ESPN. I was complained about last week. ESPN only has one baseball crew these days. So now they have to cobble together 3 more for this week.
Right.
How does this one tickle you? Michael Kay, Todd Frazier, Tim Kirkjian,
right,
Alden Gonzalez.
I've met, I guess I've interviewed Todd Frazier, and he's actually nice to talk to. I can't stand Michael Kay in any form. And Alden Gonzalez, nice guy. I don't know how he's rolling with the pivot to video. I mean, he does write too, but
he'll be the field reporter.
Right.
Kirkjian, though, I would guess, will be on a high chair in the booth.
That's right.
Yeah. Actually, I like having Tim do this round. It's a good use of him. He's short. It's short.
He's kidding aside, I guess. He's earnestly enthusiastic about baseball. I don't. There's no pretend there.
Yeah.
And as long as you can, take the squeaky voice and the oh gosh stuff, I think it's legitimate oh gosh stuff. So.
I hope a foul ball doesn't come back in the booth, though, and hit Todd Frazier, because I don't think Hawk Harrelson has enough time to get to the stadium to check on him.
Standing by in the booth. Oh, boy.
For all one of you, one of you out there who doesn't understand that reference, Todd got hurt on the field once playing for the White Sox, and the Huckaroo literally left his broadcast perch during the game to go down to check on him in the clubhouse.
Hawk, do you know what role you play in this? You're supposed to tell the fans what's going on. You're not supposed to give first aid.
I mean, I could have, if it was Yaz, I could have seen it.
For Tony C.
We used to.
Tony C's been hit in the face again.
There was a good stretch there for about 5 years where Hawk could somehow turn everything that happened into a Yaz story.
Right.
Be like,
oh, there's talent.
Yes. Oh, that's a majestic pop-up. Hey, I don't even know who his partner would have. Probably Darren. DJ with the highest pop-ups I ever saw. Yes. The answer to everything was yes.
You could put on the board yes was actually put it on the board yes.
That's right. It was just a lisp. Got it to yes. Anyway, Tigers, Astros. Astros red hot since the acquisitions of key players Jason Hayward and Hector Neris. And the Tigers, who will be really tough today with Tariq Skubal.
Their pitcher.
And then probably not after that. They're an interesting story. A team that doesn't hit home runs and doesn't get on base very well, but got hotter than hell at the end of the season and managed to... I don't know. Did they pass the Twins, or did the Twins had to pull over to the side of the road and the Tigers
Yeah, right. It's it's that axiom that I like to quote. If you I think it was Sun Tzu who said, at least as quoted in a movie with Sean Connery, you sit by the river long enough, the dead body of your enemy will float by. So that was the Twins floating. So.
Tigers, did they activate Javi Baez today? We need somebody to strike out 12 times in this series. Javi's ready.
We need our Vinny Pasquantino.
Yeah.
Trey Sweeney, the big acquisition for Jack Flaherty, who they probably could use in this series, is playing short, and he's done a good job.
Yeah. Yeah, they were a fun story if you can get beyond the. Oh, thank God! Finally, something nice happened to AJ Hinch. Wait, what? 17-8 they went in September, and they're back in the playoffs,
which is good. That's a really good month, but it is. I don't know. I mean, they could win this series. They could get up one game with Scooble-Doo.
Yeah.
Scooble-Doo. And then they only got to win one more, and you can do that with a bullpen and whatever. But and they've pitched well in the bullpen.
I mean, these series are by design upsettable. Right?
Sure.
I mean, three games, best 2 out of 3, and you get one good pitching performance, and something weird happens in another game, and the next thing you know, you're on to the next round.
Right.
It's interesting how baseball has, we went from no playoffs. We're just one team wins each league. They play the World Series and we pick a champion. We want the season to really matter to, hey, let's set up the first round so that if a good team has a bad day and a half, they go home. But
after 6 months of playing baseball. Well, I think it's just, it's not that the owners obviously they did in 1940 wanted to maximize the dollar and get the most money out of it. Of course they did. They just didn't have an imagination about, and they didn't have enough teams really for playoffs either.
Yeah.
The league was smaller.
Yeah.
But call it imagination or whatever, not giving like franchise expansion and all that.
Well, and
you just weren't forward thinking enough.
There's a few things. I've done a lot of research on this. The Earth was cool. The Earth was cooler back then. So when you got to October, there was a lot of snow. So they had to hurry up so they only had time for one series. Train travel was slow and expensive. They didn't want to be, if we have the second best record, I don't want to pay to send the guys to St. Louis. So no play. We're done.
Not to mention the media. I think they paid for them too.
Yeah. Well, they let them ride on the train with them.
Yeah.
And then they'd see all the, then they had their payoff then was to not report any of the aberrant behavior they saw the players and managers engage in.
Right.
And we'll get to Pete Rose later. So I have no idea really why, but nowadays the reason, the whole season would be playoffs if the owners could figure out how to do that because they get a lot of TV money for it.
Working on it.
The only reason the first round is really 2 out of 3 isn't because it's no other reason than I think they think that was all the games they could sell. Like if they thought it could be 3 out of 5 in that first round and they could sell that, they would. But as much as we love the baseball playoffs, the TV networks kind of want them to start and get over with. Yeah. We just want to sell some ads and get this over with as quick as possible and get back to football. Because baseball's just getting in the way of our precious football.
Well, that goes back. There is the underlying thing there, or one of the underlying things, is that how regional and local a sport it is. It's most baseball fans like their team, and they don't necessarily give a crap about the teams from out of town. And that's one of you see that issues with the local TV markets, and the contracts and the delivery systems and all that, and you see it in baseball. Ratings and interest and all that stuff in the postseason. It's I don't know if it's because of gambling or just people like football more or what, but whatever.
Yeah, I think football. Football has 2 advantages. One,
weekly.
We like, the weekly. You don't have to pay as much attention. You can just focus on, if you like one team, it's 3 hours a week.
Right.
And then obsessively calling the score and wanting everybody fired. That's your whole hobby. And then the guys running into each other. We like that. We like watching other people hurt each other. That's fun. And baseball requires you to pay attention for a long period of time. And but it's funny how regional it's gotten. And part of this is blackouts. Because I get, when I say by that, I get blackout drunk most nights, and then I can't pay attention. So I was talking to one of my friends about the Brewers, and he was like, "Who do you think Jake Bauers will play first or Rhys Hoskins?" And I'm like, "The fuck is Jake Bauers?" Now this is the Brewers who they're like 58 miles from my house. They're in the same division with the Cubs. They played each other 13 times this year, but they haven't played since like July.
Right.
And the Brewers are blacked out here. So
right.
I know the Brewers are good, and I've paid attention. I see like highlights, and I know Jackson Chourio is good, and all that stuff.
Right.
But the only Brewer games I've actually watched were the when they played the Cubs at the beginning of the season, because baseball won't let me watch that. Not that I was all that excited about it. Baseball won't let me watch the Cardinals, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I wish I wish they didn't let anybody watch them, but so it does. But it's easy to just focus on your one team and then just who they're playing that day. Whereas in football, we consume it all. You veg out on the couch for all day Sunday, and then there's another game Sunday night. And, Monday, hey, let's do 2 tonight.
A lot of people in the red zone where they just have to see the on the verge plays and all that.
Okay, but you're giving the Tigers a legit shot to beat the Astros in the first round.
Absolutely. For some of the reasons that you say, and the shortness of the series and just the nature of that, they have the best player in the series, Skubal. And if they don't win today, don't really like their chances. But and they've had a lot of, I would really like their chances if they not traded Jack Flaherty.
Yeah.
But they do have some good players in the bullpen. We're not talking necessarily like the best relievers, but Tyler Holton, the left-hander, is good, and Jason Foley, or I like to call him Axel, who comes into the games late, and so they have some weird offensive parts like Wenzel Perez, and who shouldn't be that good, but he had like one of the best at bats of the year to help them clinch, and Riley Green looks like a good player, and Parker Meadows is playing as well as elite center fielders and center. So we're not talking about high profile names, but they don't have a great offense, but they could win. Absolutely.
Yep. I have a new theory about roster building. Because we have this whole thing about how, all owners tell the general managers, if it's only going to take 85 wins to get in, why don't you just build a team you think can win 85 games? That'll save us some money. But when you get to the postseason, we see it all the time where sometimes the best team is really good because they're deep. And they can grind you down every day over the course of a season. And you get into a short series, and the other team only needs to use 3 starting pitchers and maybe 3 relievers. And if the 3 best players in their lineup are hot at the same time, your depth doesn't matter over, in this case, 3 days or next week, a week's worth of games. So wouldn't it behoove a team to build the roster the opposite of, say, the Cubs, which is instead of finding a bunch of good players, having a baseline of we're not going to be bad, but we're also not going to be that good, and just go top heavy. Just, we need 2 really good starters for the top of the rotation, and we need 3 bullpen arms, and we'll somehow figure out what to do with the regular season with those other arms. We just try not to wear them out. And we need 1 big slugger right in the middle of this lineup with some good players. As a fan, if my team didn't want to go all out and actually build a team that they think could win 100 games, I would much rather they try that approach. So that if you get in the playoffs, all of a sudden everybody's like, I don't want to play them.
Right.
The only reason we could beat them during the regular season is their 4th or 5th starters suck, but those guys aren't even going to pitch. That to me is that's a better way of if you're going to artificially say, well, we only need to win 85 games. I'd rather try to win 85 games that way than the other way. And then you get in the playoffs, kind of like the Brewers have the last few years, and then 2 days and you go home.
Right. I think because there's so many eggheads in the front office these days, sabermetrics, who remember from before, like we talked about, how much luck is involved in winning any kind of postseason series, 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 5 or even 4 out of 7. That there are a bunch of teams that can match your big stars and play the game that way, and your odds aren't really going up. It's like to win the whole thing, and there's just too much risk and not enough incentive, and it's too costly. And you have to get these great players, you typically have to sign them to long-term contracts. Yeah. So it's every year you got to pay $30 million, $40 million for Juan Soto or whatever. I think that's what they're thinking. Yeah. I think that's why it's appealing to do it the other way. And it gives them a rationalization for not putting big outlays of money on individual players.
Yeah. And I think, actually, I feel like the team that is built that way this year are the Yankees.
Yeah, just thinking that.
So if there's your test case, if you want to see if my idea is brilliant or stupid, and it's probably stupid because most of them are, we'll see how the Yankees do, because they've got their offense is built around and their offense is built around 2 dudes, and that's pretty much it. And then they've got Garrett Cole hasn't really been Garrett Cole this year, and Carlos Rodon has been better lately. But he's always one pitch away from crumpling to the ground and rolling off the field. But we'll see.
And Cole has been more like himself lately in the last 2 or 3 starts. So it's kind of taken him all season, or not pitching, and then all season that he played to get to this point. So, but I think he could throw a shutout. He's at that point. So it is a good test case. I'm going to be interesting to see if they make good on it.
The other American League wildcard series is the Royals at the Orioles. The announcers for that, this is an interesting crew. Sean McDonough, Jessica Mendoza, Ben McDonald. I'm sure that won't piss off Royal fans to have one of the Orioles announcers in the booth. And Jeff Passan.
Before his jump to the NBA, apparently.
Where he's going to replace Woj.
That's the rumor.
Won't they just make him do both? It's ESPN.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Same
They're
money.
Probably negotiating with him right now on that.
Same money. Point. You can just be the you can just be the insider for both.
We'll give you an extra $4,000 a year to be Woj too. How could I say no?
So the Orioles won 101 games last year. Flamed out right away in the playoffs. This year they only won 91. So this being baseball, they probably 10 wins less, and they'll probably have a deep run instead of the 101, and they don't. But a lot of people are giving the Royals a good chance to win this series.
Huh.
And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the Orioles bullpen is kind of bad.
It is. They tried to address it, and Lucas Ursig has worked out fine. He's been. I mean, I was saying the Orioles bullpen is bad, but you're saying the Royals bullpen also bad. So it's a battle of bad bullpens. So that would, I think, in my mind, that would shift the advantage back to the Orioles then. Right.
If both bullpens are bad, the Orioles have a better chance.
Well, the Orioles, they started, I want to say something like 40-20, and then ever since then, they've been a 500 team.
Yeah.
40-20, 50-30, one of those two, and they've been very boring all season and hurt. Lots of starting pitching injuries and insecurities in the bullpen issue. They had to finally dump Craig Kimbrell, and they probably dumped Kimball too.
Yeah.
And they never. They have a new owner, but they didn't really. They moved some prospects and they made some bad trades.
Yeah.
And everybody kind of wondered at the time, do you really think Trevor Rogers is the answer here? And he wasn't. So,
They
and the Royals are are kind of like a junior version of your test case, because Corbin Burns is on the Orioles, but the Royals might have the two most effective starting pitchers of any. They might have two effective starting pitchers where most teams, there's Tarek Skubal over here and Corbin Burns over there, and I think those two guys can dominate a game, Lugo and Reagans. And if they do, they have a really good chance of winning the series. So I think it's and they got Bobby Witt and Salvador Perez. I mean, they're actually kind of like a junior Yankees. They're very top heavy, and if the top can do it, they can win.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Sure. They can win. They can get to the World Series. I don't think there are very many good teams in the American League. I think this conversation is a little different than the National League, where I want to say the three best teams in the league, at least, are National League teams, and then we get to the American League. So I'd have to look at that on paper again. But that's another reason why this side of the bracket's so wide open.
Yeah,
and it's because of the desire to be mediocre, even among the good teams, because they want to hold the line on the huge salaries.
All right. Well, let's talk about the National League. The third game on Tuesday is the Mets and the Brewers. It's a very Chicago announcing crew. Boog Shambi, Doug Glanville, and Jesse Rogers.
Jesse Rogers.
Yeah. So if you want to mute, is there a way to mute and only have the sound come up when Doug Glanville's talking? Is that a thing? Is there a setting for that? Probably.
I don't know. Do we have the MLB TV app where you can change to someone else, the radio feed or whatever? I don't know if we'll have that option, but
yeah, you listen to Howie Rose or Bob Uecker.
Right.
Yeah. So the Mets and the Brewers. I can't wait to see Jake Bauers. I'm very excited. After my friends like, oh yeah, I wonder. Sometimes he plays first, sometimes he DHs or something. I'm like, I don't know who that is. I think I've heard the name. Is it Trevor's? I guess it's not Trevor's brother, is it? He's like, no, that's not. It's Bowers.
Yeah, it's not the same family.
Oh, thank God. But I've seen plenty of the Mets. Felt like I spent a month with them yesterday. And to me, the Mets look a lot like Francisco Liriano and a couple of pitchers. And that's pretty much the Mets. It's crazy to me that Jose Iglesias.
You mean Francisco Lindor? You've made.
What did I say? Liriano?
Francisco
I
Liriano.
say it all the time. I don't know why.
You've done that before.
I picture him. I know what I'm saying.
The spindly left-handed reliever versus
he's playing shortstop. It'd be great. Francisco Lindor, who might have been the MVP if the Dodgers didn't have an immortal who's playing DH this year.
An absolute marvel.
He was very good, and I'm always reminded, that he signed him to that huge contract, and then he struggled at the beginning, and the fans were mad, and then it took Javi coming over to struggle with him, and then they both got good, and then everybody loved Francisco again, and it was great. And I just want to tell Cub fans that's what it looks like. That's what it's supposed to look like when you spend all that money on a shortstop.
Heck, in May, Mets fans were complaining about Fernando.
Well, they're Mets fans. They deserve misery.
Right.
And yet they're around. But yeah, it looked like they had choked away their season yesterday, and then they miraculously came back and they won it. And they were just in Milwaukee. They barely had to leave. They could have left their luggage in the haunted hotel and just gone down to Atlanta for a day and then gone back.
And then sistered.
And then the plucky Brewers with all these young guys, these interchangeable little scrappy white guys that I get them all confused. Like, I don't know which one plays second base and which one plays right field, and it doesn't really matter. They just run around.
You can't tell your Blake Perkins from your Sal Frelick, from your
Bryce Terang.
Get
your head out of your Terang. I know that Wilson Contreras' little brother is their catcher because the Braves just like gave him to the Brewers. You got a catcher? Sure. All right, good. You can just have it. And that would be fun. They don't have the awkward lefty who used to fall off the mound. He's gone. I went to Cincinnati, I think. But they've got a bunch of weirdly shapen pitchers that they throw at people.
It almost like if Bernie Brewer were human, they just sort of morph into a real human being, and that's what the Brewers pitchers sort of look like.
You kind of feel though like, although it would be very baseball for the Corbin Burns is gone. All those years they had Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns, and expected that they were gonna, and they made one run the year they lost. The year Craig Counsell tried the Jedi mind trick on the Dodgers and started Wade Miley for one batter, and didn't apparently fool the Dodgers at all because they basically just put their normal, like they had all their normal left-handed hitters in, and Craig's like, shit, this isn't going to work. Then they haven't gotten out of the first round ever since. But now, Christian Yelich is hurt, and this feels like they actually get out of the first round just because you don't expect them to anymore. It's like, they never get out.
Would not surprise me. I just don't. I didn't really believe. It's not that I thought the Brewers would be bad, but I picked the Cubs to win the Central, and I wouldn't have been surprised if the Cardinals had bounced back. And I thought they were, third place. But they're here's your mirror opposite, or your what? Not your mirror opposite, but the bunch of guys. It's like the Cubs that had it worked. So let's just get a bunch of guys and fill the roster.
We'll pay them a third of what the Cubs are paying for their guys, and we'll win 10 more games, and we'll go to the playoffs, and they won't. So that'll be fun. I guess we'll find out. The Mets have all the momentum, supposedly. I don't know why, because I think they've lost like 4 out of their last 6, but they won a big game yesterday, and so now they come cruising into Milwaukee.
Kind of coming out of nowhere, 6 runs in 1 inning. I was kind of waiting for that game. There haven't been a lot of those. It's been sort of a boring pennant race on both sides. And the Twins certainly never had a game where they were able to put 5 or 6 runs on the board out of nowhere in the 7th or 8th inning. So that was good to see. Maybe that will be a spark of things to come. But and the Mets talk about teams that, obviously Steve Cohen at one time spent a lot of money, but he didn't do it this offseason. And they even came out and said,
he spent a lot of money, just not on his own team.
Yeah, exactly.
He's sending that down to Texas at 2 different cities.
Right. So, but they won anyway with the good players that they did have, and they did. Lindor is having his best season in a few years, so he's been an underrated player though.
Lindor, Liriano, I've heard it both ways.
Yeah, in your own head.
And they were getting completely shut down by Brian Clutterbuck's kid or whatever that guy's name is with the weird name for the Braves.
Spencer Schwellenbach.
Buckinson. And the 6 runs just kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. The Braves basically had gotten to the point of the game where they wanted to get, and then what thing I did not expect then was the Mets to give the lead right back.
Right.
With Diaz just forgetting to cover first base. So I thought it was foul. You couldn't have jogged over there or just headed in that direction first. But then he came back in the 9th and mowed him down, and it was all over. Yeah, I would expect. I think the Mets are better than the Brewers, but this weird wild card round. I enjoy watching the Brewers lose those first 2 games at home every year and go home. I like the sad faces of the people who I know are also Packer fans, so screw them. So I'd be fine with it. And then the nightcap tonight is the familiar ESPN announcing team of Karl Ravech, David Cone, Eduardo Perez, and Buster Olney. It's the Braves and the Padres at 7:30.
That's too many voices. They don't have one more than one dedicated group, and it's like, well, why don't you just spread out some of these people? And it's too many people talking.
It's also bad voices. Eduardo Perez's voice is awful. He's a Muppet, basically.
Yeah.
And David Cone has a weird, he doesn't really have a TV voice either. And I don't ever need to go down to little Buster Olney. I don't need to see him jumping up and down over on the sidelines. And then, if Carl Ravitch it is nice when he gets excited and he flips his wig figuratively or perhaps literally. But there's not a good crew. To me, it's emblematic of ESPN's half-assed approach to baseball. That this is your number one team. So, we have the Padres, obviously led by Luis Ariz, the man who won 3 consecutive batting titles for 3 different teams. Mixes in a double once a month if he needs it, whether he needs it or not. But the Padres, it's an interesting team because they basically AJ Preller, mad. I mean, he's not a mad scientist. He just has a trade compulsion. I got to make another trade. Is this going to help? I don't know, but I got to make another one. Trade all his prospects except for Jackson Merrill. And it turned out that was pretty smart.
That was a good idea, yeah. And
basically just decided, I'll just build a really good bullpen. And we can shorten all these playoff games down to if we get 4 innings out of a starter, we're more than set.
Right.
And I mean, I wasn't kidding when I was reading through the scenarios, and it was, if the Mets won game 1, then they would go to Milwaukee unless they won game 2. And I'm like, well, if the Mets win game 1, there is no freaking way they should even try to win game 2 because you do not want to play the Padres. Now, I guess if your ambition is to win a World Series, getting rid of the Padres in the shortest amount, only having to beat them twice, you could talk yourself into it, I guess. But the Mets are not this is not a world. They're not going to win the World Series,
right?
So maybe that, and then the Braves are what's left of them. I mean, Ozzie Albies came back just in time, but they're not getting anybody else back, and now they're not going to have Chris Sale for this series. It looks like.
I thought at first that there was. I think it sort of become clear that while I like to blame the league for not moving the previous Mets series because of the hurricane from Atlanta, that it had maybe a lot to do with the Braves dragging their feet on Sale because they didn't think that he'd be available. So that's why we didn't get at a neutral site the series that they ended up on Monday because they knew then that they wouldn't have Sale the way they wanted him for it. So
and apparently there were some other weird, the state of Georgia, MLB kept waiting for them to declare a state of emergency because then they felt like that would make it more. They basically could force the Braves then to say, look, either we're going to play this Monday on your mutual off day, we're going to have to get a doubleheader, and then we get that Tuesday game, we'll move that one up, and then you guys can get out of here. Or, and that didn't happen until it happened 2 hours after baseball's had basically said, okay, well, there's no state of emergency, so you can just keep doing it that way. And then but the reason that the state of Georgia waited was that the forecast, there were models that showed that the hurricane was actually going to go a different direction. And they're like, we don't need to do this. And then they did. So, I think they're just going to have to schedule the final month of the season from now on in places that can't get hit by hurricanes. Whether it screws those teams or not, I don't care. We want games in the South in April anyway, because it's warm.
Yeah, right.
You get all your home games loaded up at the beginning of the season, and then teams in the North and who aren't on a coast, they get all the games in September. It's perfectly fair to me.
Well, they don't. Baseball doesn't typically care about snow outs in April, so I don't know. It's I don't know why they change for the Hurricanes, but I mean, I guess it all worked out anyway. I don't know.
Well, the Indians rained out the final game of their season, and that meant that Jose Ramirez lost out on his final chance. He needed a homer and a double to finish with 40 homers, 40 doubles, and 40 stolen bases.
Oh, I didn't realize the doubles.
But the Dolan family sent all the ticket holders for that game a coupon. They can go to any game next year except for opening day. You know the one you want to go to? You can't go to that one, but you can go to any other game. That would be fine. As long as it's on a Tuesday or a Wednesday in April. Any game you can go to, except, there's a bobblehead day on this one Wednesday, so you can't go to that one either. But all the other ones, that's what you can go to.
Tell your family they suck as owners.
So the Padres rotation, they currently have Dylan Cease slated to pitch game 3. They're going to go Joe Musgrove in game 2. But I have a feeling if they lose tonight, all of a sudden Dylan Cease is going to pitch game 2.
Right.
But that'll be interesting. I've enjoyed the Xander Bogaerts experience for them.
Huh?
All right, you're going to play shortstop. You're going to play. Don't worry, you're going to play shortstop. You know what? It's 2 days before the season. Why don't you learn how to play second base? You go to second base. All right, second base. Could you maybe play some first? Do you know how to play first? And at the end of the season, you're going to have to play shortstop now because all of our other shortstops are hurt. So go get them. So their middle of the infield defense is a little shaky, but everything else is pretty good. And did I see that
Manny Machado's having an MVP second half?
Yeah.
Except for Ohtani, of course. I wouldn't. Not that I'm saying he's like actually the MVP, but he's playing.
I know what you meant.
Like himself.
Yes, he's been a great player late in the season. I'm just happy for the Padres. I just love looking at the electric Mike Schilt in the dugout. Huh?
Do you think he would wear a T-shirt that says "I happen"?
I didn't know he had. I remember it was like he'd been the Cardinal manager for like 3 months before I realized he had hair. He just looks like a guy who was bald with his hat on, and he takes his hat off. He's got a full head of hair. I'm like, Jesus, I didn't expect that.
I'm full of surprises, Andy.
He got married during one of the seasons with the Cardinals.
Huh.
It's like the manager just got married. It's like a Leo DeRoche thing. He didn't take off for a week like Leo did with the Cubs.
Right.
But yeah, he got married like over the All-Star break. He got married. And it's like, what? This is just like the weirdest guy I've ever. And then he took the Cardinals to the playoffs, got fired, and they haven't been back since. So, whatever. All right, so that's the wild card round. I mean, other than I think the Padres are gonna beat the Braves. Yes. If anything else could happen. I would expect the Astros, Orioles, Mets, Padres. But I'm usually wrong, so you might want to bet opposite that if you can. Last thing I want to talk about was Pete Rose died yesterday, which has already ignited to me the most boring, over-hashed argument of all time, which is, should he be in the Hall of Fame?
A lot of hash.
And I'll just say that I've written it before. I wrote it again today. He's in the Hall of Fame. If you go to the Hall of Fame, there's Pete Rose shit everywhere. Except for the stuff he sold on QVC. Everything else...
everything that wasn't locked down that he sold.
Everything else is there. And so this tired argument, you can't tell the history of baseball without Pete Rose. They don't even try.
No.
You know he has the most hits. You know he played the most games. You know he scored the 6 most runs. You know he made the All-Star team 17 times at 5 different positions. He was a really good player. He was kind of a weird, stocky little fat guy, though, that especially the last 15 years of his career, who basically only hit singles and like punched Bud Harrelson. I mean, that was pretty much that. He did that all the time, which was fine.
Like a basketball.
Yes, that's right. He would dribble the ball after outs. And he admitted to betting on baseball. And so, no, he doesn't get to go and he doesn't ever get a plaque. That's the only thing he doesn't get, right? Like, little Bob Costas was on today, and he was talking about, he's like, this idea that baseball hasn't honored him. The Reds retired his number. The Reds have a statue of him. I mean, it's like, they didn't try to erase him from history. They basically said two things. You can't work in baseball anymore. And because you can't work, we're putting you on the suspended list. The Hall of Fame has decided if you're on that list, you can't appear on a ballot, so you can't get in the Hall of Fame. And that's it. And then I'm sure there was a way when this first happened, Bart Giamatti, who died 8 days after he banned him. I don't know, maybe put it in the will that Paul Giamatti gets to evaluate it. Every year, you got to go to Paul Giamatti and try to convince him that you get to go in the Hall of Fame. But it's Faye Vincent used to hint that basically what Bart had told him was, if you completely redo your, change everything about your life, stop gambling, stop hanging out with gamblers, basically do all that stuff, then we'll consider reinstating you. And he just never did it. He basically moved to Vegas and always worked at a casino and did, it's like, well,
double down, if you will.
And then refused to admit that he ever did it until he went to write a book and he needed some money. So he sold a book and then he admitted that he did it. And then he immediately backtracked on what he wrote in the book and said, well, I never bet against the Reds. So that's fine. It's like, no, that's not fine. It's still wrong what you did. So I don't know. My question.
Well, he didn't say in the book that he bet when he was a player. I don't believe. I think that came out later.
Right.
That when he was a player, 70s and 80s, that he bet. And I've seen some things that indicate that he even bet against the team. And that's not even really important whether you place a bet or not, because when you are a frequent bettor and you are involved in the whatever, and you don't bet on the Reds that day, or that, what do you think that tells the other gamblers about, well, what's going to happen today, maybe? How are things going to be influenced? There's, it's funny you talk about Bob Costas pointing out how baseball's honored him and he's in the Hall of Fame, and it's all true, and they've retired his number. I think there's a great case to make that those are shameful happenings. This is a guy that really hurt the integrity of the game. For all his image of doing everything to win, he was absolutely not that. Yeah. He was a guy who sabotaged his own players and his teams if it suited him on a betting slip. And we're not even getting into statutory rape and perhaps other kinds and the other things that he did off the field that make him a person that, no matter what he did in a baseball field, nobody should be excited about supporting him. If you are a Pete Rose fan, after all that we know about him, off the field, let's say he never bet on the Reds or baseball, I have a serious problem with you. You're fucked up.
Yeah, he's so Max has a documentary on him, a 4-part documentary on Pete Rose that I managed to get through the first one of him. Okay, I think I've seen enough.
Yeah.
Not because to me there's not. I think they're 90-minute episodes, so
that's a lot.
There are not 6 hours of. There's not 6 hours of Pete Rose documentary, so it gets boring. Yeah. And to me, the most damning parts of it are some of the interesting stuff in the first episode is, him. He grew up in Cincinnati. He was a hometown Cincinnati kid. The Reds, when he broke in as a young player, the veterans on the team hated him. His manager didn't like him. His original manager didn't like him. And so some of that was pretty interesting. But then it would cut to new stuff. Like him making appearances and talking, giving the same old, telling the same anecdotes or whatever. And you're just like, oh, it's just, I don't need to hear any of this stuff again. It's old and it's tired and it's bleh. So I didn't plow through the rest of it. And I was like, oh, I've seen enough. So Yeah, he got a lot of hits. Obviously he would have been first ballot Hall of Famer, considered one of the all-time greats, but he fucked it up, and he did it. He basically just decided that the rule didn't apply to him, and he would just do it. And I'm Pete Rose. So what are you going to do about it? Well, that's what they did about it, and he couldn't believe it. And I have a feeling that this whole idea that Pete was going to they were going to suspend. Who would sign a thing where they suspend you for life with a wink that they'll let you back in a year?
Right.
You know, I've always found it hard to believe that was that promise, overt or not, was ever made to him. I just think Pete just decided in his mind, that's fine. I'll sign this, make it go away. But in a year, I'll start lobbying my case and they'll just let me back in.
He's the classic guy who hears what he wants to hear. And he probably heard something along the lines of what you mentioned earlier about how, if you turn your life around and you admit everything you did and behave yourself and don't associate with the same elements that you did before, will put you back in the hopper for reinstatement. That's probably what he heard.
Yeah.
And he probably, took that to mean, well, if I just wait this out for a year, he lies to himself as much as he lies to everybody else. And I'm disappointed I ever kind of found him amusing. So, and I used to, but I was wrong too.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm waiting for the first Johnny Bench interview.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how long Johnny can pretend that he's, I probably won't. If I'm Johnny, I don't even pretend. I thought you were going to say he's glad he's dead. I was going to be like, it doesn't, I never liked you. Because he didn't. They notoriously disliked each other for 13 years as teammates. He's pretty good at getting to the point on that. So yeah, I almost expected last night during the coverage was them to cut to Johnny smoking a cigar like Wayne Fonts when the Bears were losing and putting the Lions into the playoffs. There's just Johnny over there.
I always got the impression that it wasn't necessarily like a 100% straight up dislike, but it was maybe a little bit of a disappointment that he just wouldn't get it together. Yeah. For a guy who could be so great at baseball, for someone with his skills, he wasn't a home run hitter or anything, but that he could not channel that into being a better person. Yeah. I mean, or at least trying for a little while. And it never happened.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that somebody will tell you that, the personality defects that bit him for the last, 50 years of his life were the things that actually made him a good baseball player, because he wasn't more physically gifted than anybody, really.
Right.
But he worked his ass off and he was tough as hell. And, it's not like he was a talented baseball player, but he wasn't one of the all-time most talented baseball players.
Right.
And he couldn't turn it off. He couldn't compartmentalize the, on the field, I'm a SOB. He was just that way, all the time. And I'm sure there are part of his resentment towards baseball was that there were guys before him who were every bit as bad. I mean, the more we hear about Ty Cobb in the story, now we don't get there are no new Ty Cobb stories. Everyone who knew Ty is dead and been dead for 50 years. But a lot of stuff came out, obviously, not just the Al Stump book that became the movie, but Ty was a despicable person on and off the field, and probably did a lot of this shit and just never got caught. But which is kind of ironic, right? The guy that they're intertwined forever because that's whose record he broke.
Right.
And they were very similar, at least in attitude, and maybe it had to be that way. I worry now about Derek Jeter. Seems like a nice guy, but he gets the 6th most hits in baseball. He must have to be just a raving asshole. Maybe not. I guess you don't have to be.
I don't know. He certainly decided that running the baseball team, or at least the Marlins, wasn't for him.
Yeah, he's not the first person who has decided that running the Marlins was not for him.
Oh, wait a minute.
Pretty much everybody who's ever run the Marlins has decided that that's not for them. So really the only thing Jeter did to the Marlins was he made him move the home run sculpture outside.
Right.
But they can always put that back. He's gone. All right. Well, there's actual wall-to-wall baseball at least the next 2 days to watch. The schedule to me is strange, that how condensed it is. Every game starts within a 6-hour window.
Right.
But I'm sure there's a reason for that. But there's real live baseball on ABC.
Reminds me of 84 and the Cubs.
That's right. Just need Keith Jackson and who was
Don
it?
Drysdale? Earl Weaver?
Earl Weaver. And Reggie?
Yeah, that sounds right.
I think it might have been. I'll have to look that up now. Mike Donahue was screaming at his phone because I got him. I got 2 of the 3. I know Earl Weaver was there.
Sorry.
Yeah, it might have been Drysdale and not Keith. I don't know. I did watch a few years ago. I rewatched Game 5 for the first time since I was a kid.
No.
And there's a whole column about it. I should go. I'll find it and link to it. Just to watch it. I waited till they won the World Series before I finally watched it because I'd seen one. And it is funny, even watching it early in the game. You're like, Sutcliffe's cruising, and the Cubs, they're going to do this. They got a lead, and then you can just watch it all. He starts to melt. Literally, it's hot, and he's fat, and he's he's starting to wear out on the mound, and it's like, oh no. And then all the notorious bad shit started to happen. But the one I need to go back and watch, because I don't think I ever have, is Game 4. The Garvey home run off Lee Smith. But I just don't think I can.
I still have faint memories, and that's enough, Yeah. I don't think there was ever more fun blowout game than Game 1.
Yeah.
So was it Game 1 with Sutcliffe hitting the home run?
Yep. Yeah, and then Steve Trout won Game 2, and you thought, all right, here we go. And then they didn't. The Marquee did a really kind of a bad, it was shocking. They did. It was a great idea, poorly executed. They brought back a bunch of the only living. They didn't bring back any of the dead ones, but they brought back some of the living 84 Cubs. And Cole Wright did the reason that the show was less good than it should have been was I think they had 9 of them, and they just had everybody sitting in this half. It looked like they were at a AA meeting. They had them sitting in they arranged the chairs in a half moon, and they're all looking out. And Cole is just kind of randomly asking people questions. And then there was one I missed the very beginning of it, and I missed and I could not figure out who this guy was. And I'm like, who the hell is this? And I'm like, oh, it was a black guy. And I'm like, there weren't that many. So I'm going that's not Henry Cotto. Is it Thad Bosley? It was Thad Bosley. But without the, he didn't have the fro sticking out from under his hat. I didn't recognize him. But they were telling stories about, the 84 season, which should have been really fun, but it just didn't. Cole wasn't very good at it. And it felt like a real wasted opportunity. I mean, Leon Durham is sitting there with a towel on his lap for some reason. I guess he figured he was going to start sweating under the lights. He literally has a towel folded up on his lap. And it's like, Leon, I think.
Still trying to dry his mitt from the Gatorade.
Also, yes, that's right. Maybe it would be funny if he brought it out and he's like, I can't. This thing is still wet. But you'd be amazed. Ron Say, not a gray hair.
Huh.
Yeah, couldn't have been dye. Worst dye job ever. He should add a little of the mustache, because until they zoomed in, you couldn't even see his mustache. He still got it. But yeah, nothing new was learned from that hour-long special about the 40th anniversary of the 84 Cubs. But the one funny thing was they had a video wall behind them, but they could see it on a monitor in front of them. they kept showing the celebration in the clubhouse over and over. That was like the background. Because it was really supposed to be, it aired originally on the 40th anniversary of the clincher when there were 5,000 fans in Pittsburgh watching them win. Say at some point, just unprompted, goes, I've been watching these highlights the whole time and I've never seen myself. So apparently he goes, apparently I went in another room and got completely hammered. So that was like the one. That was the only memorable thing from the entire special. But yeah, 40 years removed from that, and it's starting to come to terms with it. All right, well, enjoy the baseball.
You too, Andy. Thanks for having me on. We'll be back soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. All right.
Many of us have herpes.
No, I thought it generally sucked. I didn't think it was a specific suck. I thought it was like an all-encompassing type of suck. So, we're going to try and rectify that. But for right now, I'm going to be pretty pissed about it.
It's fitting. It's got to be done with one of the best games of all time. Just unbelievable. I mean, got to congratulate the Dolan family.
Sean, my podcast co-host Andy, you were his favorite player growing up.
Oh, thank you so much. Awesome.